The Sutherland family Thanksgiving always felt like attending court. Formal, uncomfortable, and designed to remind you exactly where you stood in the hierarchy. I sat at the far end of their mahogany table, watching Claire's mother Marjorie arrange the centerpiece for the third time while her father Richard carved the turkey with surgical precision. "Nicholas, dear, how's the insurance business treating you?" Marjorie asked, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension reserved for people she considered beneath her notice. "Can't complain," I replied, cutting into my sweet potato casserole. What I didn't mention was that I'd left insurance fraud investigation 6 months ago to focus on a different kind of case, one much closer to home. Claire laughed from across the table, that musical sound that once made my heart skip but now set my teeth on edge. "Oh, Mother, Nick's so modest. He doesn't like talking about work because he thinks it's boring." Her sister Jennifer smiled politely while bouncing her 2-year-old on her lap. Her husband Daniel sat beside her, checking his phone with the practiced discretion of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. I understood the feeling. "Well, I think investigation work sounds fascinating," Jennifer offered kindly. She'd always been the nicer sister, though that wasn't saying much in this family. "Former investigation work," Claire corrected with another laugh. "Nick's moved on to consulting now. Much less exciting, aren't you, honey?" The table had 14 people around it. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them watching this little domestic theater play out. I could feel their attention like stage lights, waiting for my response. "I still investigate things," I said quietly. "Just different kinds of cases now." Richard looked up from his carving. "What sort of consulting, Nicholas? Financial? Corporate?" "Personal matters," I replied, meeting his gaze. "Situations where people need to know the truth about their circumstances." Claire's laugh grew sharper. "Oh, listen to him being all mysterious. The truth is, Nick's wonderfully naive about most things, especially when it comes to trusting people." The conversation around the table quieted slightly. Marjorie's sister Helen paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Naive how?" Uncle Robert asked, genuinely curious. Claire took a long sip of wine, her cheeks already flushed from her third glass. "Well, for instance, he still thinks I'm completely faithful to him. Isn't that adorable? After 8 years of marriage, he has this sweet, blind faith that I would never even look at another man." The silence that followed wasn't complete. Forks still clinked against plates. Someone cleared their throat, but it felt heavy. Jennifer's face went pale, and Daniel's phone slipped from his fingers onto the table with a sharp crack. "How pathetic is that?" Claire continued, gesturing with her wineglass. "A former investigator who can't see what's right in front of his nose." The family members exchanged glances. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. Richard resumed carving, the knife making deliberate scraping sounds against the platter. I set down my fork and waited. 3 beats. 4. Long enough for the room to notice the silence, long enough for Claire to realize she might have pushed too far. "Almost as pathetic," I said finally, "as your sister's husband. Right, Jennifer?" Jennifer's water glass slipped from her hand, sending ice cubes scattering across the white tablecloth. Daniel's chair scraped backward as he half stood, then sat back down hard. "What did you just say?" Jennifer whispered. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, placing it gently on the table between the cranberry sauce and the dinner rolls. "I said it's pathetic when someone can't see what's right in front of them. But I'm not that someone, Claire." Claire's wineglass trembled in her hand. "Nick, what are you—" "Ask Jennifer's husband Daniel where he was every Tuesday for the past 18 months, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "Ask him about the Riverside Inn on Highway 9. Ask him about room 247. Claire's glass shattered against the hardwood floor, red wine spreading like spilled paint across the pristine white boards. "You're insane," Daniel said, but his voice cracked on the second word. I picked up my phone and swiped to the photo gallery. "Hotel receipts," I announced, turning the screen toward the table. 43 separate occasions. Always the same room, always paid for with the credit card from Daniel's dental practice. Swipe. Text messages. "Can't wait to see you Tuesday, baby. Wear the blue dress I bought you. Tell Nick you're at yoga class again." Swipe. And my personal favorite, the pregnancy test Claire hid in her gym bag last month. The one she took 3 days after her Tuesday afternoon appointment. Jennifer made a sound like air being let out of a balloon. Her mother-in-law, Helen, reached over to take the baby from her arms just as Jennifer doubled over, retching onto the floor. "This is ridiculous," Claire said, but she was backing away from the table. "You're making this up. You're having some kind of breakdown." Daniel stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "I need to leave. I need to—" "Sit down," Richard commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos like the carving knife through turkey. Both of you, now. I'm not sitting here and listening to these lies, Daniel protested. I swiped to another photo. Bank records. Joint loan application filed 4 months ago. Claire Sutherland Halston and Daniel Marcus Hawthorne, co-signers on a $180,000 mortgage for a beach house in Wilmington. Funny thing, neither Jennifer nor I knew anything about this business venture. Jennifer looked up from her retching, mascara streaming down her cheeks. What beach house? Daniel, what is he talking about? Daniel's face had gone gray. He opened his mouth twice before any sound came out. Jenny, I can explain. Explain what? She screamed, standing up so violently that dishes rattled. Explain how you've been screwing my sister. Explain how you bought a house with her behind my back. Explain how you've been lying to me for over a year. The baby started crying. Helen bounced him gently while the rest of the family sat frozen, watching this domestic explosion unfold over their Thanksgiving dinner. Claire tried one more time. Nick, please, you're misunderstanding. Am I misunderstanding the spare key to the beach house that I found in your jewelry box? I asked calmly. The one with the little seahorse keychain, or am I misunderstanding the ultrasound appointment you have scheduled for next week? The one you made under the name Claire Hawthorne? Richard's knife clattered to the platter. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Claire Elizabeth Sutherland, is this true? Claire looked around the table desperately, seeking an ally, a friendly face, anyone who might help her salvage this situation. She found none. Even her mother had turned away. Daddy, Is it true? Richard roared. Daniel broke first. The man who'd been confident enough to carry on an affair for 18 months, who'd been bold enough to co-sign a mortgage with his lover, crumpled like wet paper. He sank into his chair and put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry, Jenny. I never meant for it to happen. It started so small, just talking. And then... Jennifer picked up her dinner plate and hurled it at him. It struck his shoulder and exploded into fragments, sending gravy and turkey flying across the dining room. 18 months, she shrieked. 18 months you've been lying to me. 18 months you've been with her while I've been home taking care of our son. Claire finally found her voice. Jenny, please, let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We tried to stop, but what? Jennifer grabbed another plate. But you just couldn't help yourselves. But it was too romantic. But you fell in love? The second plate caught Claire in the chest, staining her cream-colored sweater with cranberry sauce. Richard stood up slowly, one hand pressed to his chest. His breathing was labored, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the November chill in the house. Get out, he said quietly. Daddy, please. Claire started. Get out, he bellowed, and then doubled over, gasping. Marjorie screamed. Uncle Robert jumped up to catch Richard as he stumbled. Someone shouted about calling 911. In the chaos that followed, paramedics arriving, Richard being loaded onto a stretcher, family members crying and shouting, I sat quietly at my place at the table, finishing my sweet potato casserole. I'd wanted a show, I'd certainly gotten one, but the curtain was still up. Richard survived his cardiac episode, though the doctors kept him in the hospital for 3 days of observation. I visited him on the second day, bringing coffee and the morning paper. Claire and Daniel were nowhere to be seen. You knew this would happen, he said without preamble when I walked into his room. No greeting, no small talk. Just the direct accusation of a man who'd built a business empire by reading people. I knew you had a heart condition, I replied, settling into the visitor's chair. I hoped the shock wouldn't trigger an episode, but I couldn't control that variable. Variable? He almost smiled. You sound like you planned this whole thing like a military operation. 6 months of planning, I confirmed. Ever since I noticed Claire started going to yoga classes that her gym doesn't offer. Richard studied my face in the harsh hospital lighting. Why Thanksgiving? Why in front of the whole family? Because Claire chose to humiliate me in front of the whole family. She made her announcement like it was entertainment. I thought she deserved the same courtesy. A nurse came in to check his vitals, giving us both disapproving looks. When she left, Richard leaned forward in his bed. What do you want, Nicholas? Nothing from you, I said honestly. This isn't about money or revenge against your family. This is about Claire and Daniel thinking they could make me the fool in their little drama. And now? Now they get to live with the consequences of their choices. Richard was quiet for a long moment, staring at the heart monitor's steady beep. My will has an adultery clause. Did you know that? I suspected. Men of your generation often included them. Claire's share of the inheritance, $2 million, reverts to Jennifer if Claire commits adultery during her marriage. He looked at me directly. I assume you have enough evidence to prove adultery in court? More than enough. Good. He settled back against his pillows. She made her choice. Now she lives with it. I left the hospital and drove to Jennifer's house, a modest colonial in the suburbs that looked like a palace compared to the studio apartment Claire would soon be able to afford. Jennifer answered the door with red-rimmed eyes and her baby on her hip. "I don't know whether to thank you or hate you," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "You don't have to do either, but we need to talk about next steps." Her living room was cluttered with toys and baby supplies, a stark contrast to the pristine showcase Claire and I had maintained. Jennifer cleared a space on the couch and sat down heavily. "Daniel moved out," she said without my asking. "Took 2 suitcases and his golf clubs, left everything else." "Where's he staying?" "I don't know and I don't care." She bounced the baby absently. "Claire called me 17 times yesterday. I finally blocked her number." I pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "Sam Krebs. He's a family law attorney, specializes in high-asset divorces. I've already spoken with him about representing both of us." "Both of us?" "Our situations are connected. It makes sense to coordinate our legal strategy. Plus, Sam gives a discount for multiple clients in the same case." Jennifer studied the card. "You really did plan this whole thing, didn't you?" "Every detail I could control. The rest depended on how Claire and Daniel reacted under pressure." "And they reacted exactly like you expected?" "Worse, actually. I thought Daniel might try to deny it initially. I didn't expect him to break down and confess immediately." The baby started fussing, and Jennifer stood to walk him around the room. "What happens now? With the divorces, I mean." "That depends on what you want. If you want to take Daniel for everything he's worth, we can do that. If you want a quick, clean separation, we can do that too." "I want him to hurt," she said quietly. "I want him to understand what he threw away. I want him to regret every Tuesday afternoon for the rest of his life." "Then we're on the same page." I spent the next hour explaining what I'd discovered during my investigation. The beach house was just the beginning. Daniel had been siphoning money from his dental practice to fund the affair. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, jewelry for Claire. He'd even taken out a second mortgage on the house he shared with Jennifer, using the money to make the down payment on the Wilmington property. "He mortgaged our home to buy a love nest with my sister?" Jennifer asked, her voice dangerously quiet. $43,000? The paperwork is in your husband's home office, filed under business expenses." Jennifer set the baby down in his playpen and walked to the window. Outside, November wind scattered leaves across her front yard like confetti after a celebration no one wanted to attend. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Suspected for 6 months. Confirmed for 3. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I said anything." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed evidence that would hold up in court. Suspicion isn't enough. I needed documentation, proof, a paper trail that Daniel and Claire couldn't deny or explain away." She turned from the window. "What kind of evidence?" I pulled out my phone and opened a folder labeled Documentation. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, text messages recovered from Claire's old phone. She threw it away, but I retrieved it from our trash. Bank records showing the joint accounts and loan applications. Photos of them together at restaurants, entering and leaving the hotel. Even a recording of Claire talking to her friend Michelle about the affair. "A recording?" Claire thought I was asleep. She was on the phone in our kitchen at midnight, telling Michelle about how exciting it was to sneak around, how Daniel made her feel alive again. She went into explicit detail about their encounters. Jennifer sat back down, looking overwhelmed. "You recorded your own wife confessing to adultery." "I documented my wife confessing to adultery. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Intent. I wasn't trying to trap her. I was trying to protect myself. When someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. Claire showed me exactly who she was that night." The baby started crying again, and Jennifer picked him up automatically. "What about the pregnancy? Is it really Daniel's?" "The timing suggests it, but we'll know for certain once the paternity test is completed." "And if it is his baby?" "Then Daniel will have to pay child support to Claire while also paying alimony to you. His dental practice will be working primarily to support the 2 women he betrayed." Jennifer almost smiled at that. "Poetic justice." "Practical justice. The courts don't care about poetry." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "What is it?" Jennifer asked. "Claire's trying to withdraw money from our joint savings account. The bank is calling to verify the transaction because I put a hold on all our accounts yesterday." "Can you do that?" "When there's evidence of adultery affecting marital assets, yes. Especially when one spouse has already demonstrated a pattern of financial deception." I stood up and gathered my papers. "I need to go deal with this. But Jennifer, we're going to win this. Claire and Daniel made their choices, and now they get to live with the consequences. But we're going to make sure those consequences are as comprehensive as possible. Nick, she called as I reached the door. Thank you for telling me the truth, even though it hurt, for having evidence instead of just accusations, for making sure I wasn't the last to know. Nobody deserves to be made a fool of in their own life, I replied, especially not by the people who are supposed to love them. I drove home through the gathering dusk, already planning my next move. Claire would be waiting, probably with tears and explanations and promises to change. She'd want to talk about counseling and second chances and working through our problems. But I was done talking. It was time for action. Claire's car was in our driveway when I got home, which surprised me. I'd expected her to be at her parents' house, regrouping and planning her counterattack. Instead, she was sitting at our kitchen table with a cup of tea, looking like she was preparing for a business meeting. "We need to talk," she said when I walked in. "No, we don't." I hung my jacket on the back of a chair and opened the refrigerator. "We need to pack your things and discuss logistics. Talking is over." "Nick, please, I know you're angry." "Angry?" I pulled out a bottle of water and turned to face her. "Claire, I'm not angry. Angry is what you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic. This is something else entirely." She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red. But she'd also changed clothes and fixed her hair. Even in crisis, Claire couldn't help trying to look perfect. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said. "Daniel and I, we tried to fight it. We knew it was wrong." "For 18 months you tried to fight it? That's some impressive resistance." "Don't be sarcastic. This is serious." I sat down across from her at the table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 8 years, where we'd planned vacations and argued about bills and discussed our future children. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You're right. It is serious. Adultery is grounds for divorce in this state. Financial deception is grounds for asset forfeiture. Fraud is grounds for criminal charges." Claire's face went white. "Criminal charges?" "You and Daniel took out loans using false information. You established joint accounts without disclosing them to your spouses. You used marital assets to fund an extramarital relationship. Depending on how aggressive the prosecutor feels, that could be several different felonies. I wouldn't what? Press charges against the woman who publicly humiliated me and then tried to steal money from our joint account this afternoon." She had the grace to look embarrassed about the bank incident. "I just needed some cash to what? Fund your new life with Daniel? Pay for the beach house you bought behind my back? Support the baby you're carrying?" "The baby isn't..." She stopped herself. "Isn't what, Claire? Isn't Daniel's? Isn't planned? Isn't going to complicate your divorce settlement?" She stared at her teacup, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her laughter at Thanksgiving dinner, the way she'd announced my naivety like it was a punchline designed for her family's entertainment. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to pack your essential items and be out of this house by tomorrow night. I want you to sign a separation agreement acknowledging adultery. I want you to provide a complete financial disclosure of all assets, accounts, and debts you've acquired during the marriage. And if I do all that, then we can have a civilized divorce instead of a scorched earth legal battle." Claire looked around our kitchen, the granite countertops we'd picked out together, the custom cabinets I'd installed myself, the breakfast nook where she'd eaten her morning yogurt for 8 years. "This is my home too," she said. "No, it's not. This house is in my name only. I bought it before we were married, and I've made every mortgage payment since. You have no legal claim to it." "That's not true. Marital property laws don't apply when one spouse commits adultery and uses marital assets to fund the affair. Sam Krebs explained it to me in detail. You forfeited your claim to marital property when you started your relationship with Daniel." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "You can't just throw me out. I have rights." "You had rights. You gave them up when you decided to mock me in front of your family and carry on an affair for 18 months. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Jennifer's number. "I have to take this," I said, standing up. "Nick?" Jennifer's voice was tight with stress. "Daniel's here. He's demanding to see his son, and he's drunk. I don't know what to do." "Call the police. Don't let him in the house." "He has keys." "Then take the baby and go to your mother's. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and grabbed my jacket. "Where are you going?" Claire demanded. "To help Jennifer deal with your boyfriend's breakdown." "He's not my boyfriend. It's complicated." "No, Claire, it's simple. You and Daniel chose to have an affair. Now you get to deal with the consequences. All of them." I was halfway to the door when she called after me. "What about us? What about 8 years of marriage? What about the life we built together?" I stopped and turned back to her. She was standing in the middle of our kitchen, looking small and lost and desperate. For just a moment, I remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with, confident and beautiful and full of plans for our future. "You destroyed that life when you decided it wasn't enough for you," I said. "You can't unmake that choice, Claire. Neither can I." I left her standing there and drove to Jennifer's house, where I could see Daniel's car parked crookedly in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see him pounding on the door while Jennifer stood inside, holding her baby and talking on the phone. This was going to get worse before it got better, but I'd prepared for that too. The police arrived at Jennifer's house just as I pulled up. Daniel was still on the front porch, alternately pounding on the door and shouting through the windows. He'd clearly been drinking, a lot, and his usual polished appearance was completely gone. His shirt was untucked, his hair was disheveled, and he was swaying slightly as he yelled, "Jenny, open the door. I need to see my son. You can't keep me from my son." Officer Martinez, a woman I recognized from my insurance investigation days, approached Daniel with professional calm. "Sir, I need you to step away from the door." "This is my house," Daniel protested. "My wife is inside with my child." "Sir, do you live at this address?" Daniel paused, confusion flickering across his flushed face. We're separated. Temporarily. But that's my son in there. If you don't currently live here, and the resident has asked you to leave, you're trespassing. I need you to come with me." I walked up to Officer Martinez while her partner kept Daniel occupied. "Maria, it's Nick Halston. I used to work with your department on insurance fraud cases." "Nick, good to see you. This your situation?" "Connected to it. The man on the porch is Daniel Hawthorne. He's been having an affair with my wife. Jennifer inside is his wife and my wife's sister. It's complicated." Maria nodded. "Domestic situations usually are. Is there a restraining order?" "Not yet, but there will be by Monday morning. Daniel's been drinking and making threats. Jennifer's scared." "Understood. We'll take him in for public intoxication and trespassing. That should give everyone time to cool off." As the officers led Daniel to their patrol car, he spotted me standing by my truck. His expression shifted from confusion to rage. "This is your fault," he shouted, struggling against the handcuffs. "You destroyed everything. You couldn't just mind your own business." "My business became your business when you started sleeping with my wife," I replied calmly. "You vindictive piece of—" The rest of his words were cut off as Officer Martinez's partner helped him into the back of the patrol car. Jennifer opened her front door once the police car pulled away. She was still holding her baby, and both of them looked shaken. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing. How long was he out there?" "About 20 minutes. He kept saying he had rights, that I couldn't keep him from his son. Then he started talking about how you'd ruined his life, how everything was perfect until you interfered." I followed her into the house, noting that she'd already started packing boxes. "Going somewhere?" "My mother's, at least temporarily. I don't feel safe here anymore, and I don't want to be alone when Daniel gets out of jail." "Smart thinking. What about the house?" "I don't know. Daniel's name is on the mortgage, but I've been making the payments since he moved out. Sam Krebs says we need to sort out the financial arrangements before Daniel can force a sale." My phone buzzed with a text message from Claire. "Daniel's been arrested. What did you do?" I showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head in disgust. "She's worried about him, not about us," Jennifer said. "Not about what this is doing to her nephew or her sister or anyone else. Just Daniel." "That's who she is," I replied. "The question is what we're going to do about it." Jennifer finished packing the baby's diaper bag and looked around her living room one more time. "I want them to pay, Nick. Not just financially. I want them to understand what they've destroyed." "They will, but we have to be smart about it. Legal, documented, and thorough." "What's the next step?" "Monday morning, we file for restraining orders against both of them. We also file a motion to freeze all marital assets until the divorce proceedings are complete. Then we start the discovery process." "Discovery?" "We force them to provide complete financial disclosure. Every account, every asset, every debt. If they've hidden anything else, we'll find it." Jennifer strapped her baby into his car seat and loaded her suitcases into her minivan. "What about the beach house? What about it? Can we force them to sell it?" I smiled for the first time in days. "Jennifer, we can do better than that. We can foreclose on it." "What do you mean?" Daniel used fraudulent information on the loan application. He claimed the property was for business use, which qualifies for a lower interest rate. But it's actually a personal residence, which violates the terms of the loan. The bank can call in the full amount immediately. And if they can't pay? Then the bank seizes the property and sells it at auction. Daniel and Claire lose everything they put into it, plus they're still liable for any remaining balance on the loan. Jennifer's expression was fierce. How long will that take? If we provide the bank with evidence of the fraud, probably 60 to 90 days. Do it. I followed Jennifer's minivan to her mother's house, making sure she and the baby got inside safely. Mrs. Patterson, Jennifer's mother, met us at the door with the grim expression of a woman who'd been expecting this visit. I never liked that husband of yours, she announced without preamble. Too smooth, too charming. Men like that are always hiding something. You were right, Mom, Jennifer said tiredly. I usually am. Come on, let's get you and the little one settled. I helped carry the suitcases inside, then pulled Jennifer aside. I'm going to contact the bank tomorrow about the beach house loan. I'm also going to reach out to some of my former colleagues about Daniel's business practices. What kind of business practices? Insurance fraud, for starters. If Daniel's been billing insurance companies for procedures he didn't perform or inflating treatment costs, that's a federal crime. And given his willingness to commit loan fraud, I'd bet money he's been cutting corners in other areas too. Jennifer looked shocked. You think he's been cheating his patients? I think Daniel's been living beyond his means for years, and that requires creative financing. Men who steal from their wives usually steal from other people, too. I left Jennifer at her mother's house and drove home, already planning my next moves. Claire's car was gone from the driveway, but she'd left a note on the kitchen table. Gone to stay with Michelle. We need to talk before you do anything else you'll regret. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. The only thing I regretted was not discovering the affair sooner, but I was going to make up for lost time. Monday morning brought the first real satisfaction I'd felt since Thanksgiving. Sam Krebs had worked over the weekend to prepare our paperwork, and by 9 a.m., we'd filed restraining orders against both Daniel and Claire, along with motions to freeze all marital assets pending divorce proceedings. The restraining orders will be served by this afternoon, Sam explained as we sat in his downtown office. Both Daniel and Claire are prohibited from contacting you or Jennifer, from coming within 500 feet of your respective homes, and from accessing any joint financial accounts. What about the beach house? Jennifer asked. I've already contacted First National Bank with evidence of loan fraud. They're reviewing the file and will likely call in the full loan amount within the week. I pulled out a folder containing the financial documents I'd been gathering for months. There's more. Daniel's been using his dental practice as a personal piggy bank. Equipment purchases that were never delivered, supply orders for a second office that doesn't exist, insurance billings for procedures that were never performed. Sam whistled low. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate, about $200,000 over 3 years. That's federal wire fraud if he's been billing insurance companies. He has been. I've got copies of the claims. Jennifer stared at the documents spread across Sam's desk. I had no idea. I knew we were living well, but I thought the practice was just successful. The practice is successful, I corrected. Daniel's been stealing from it to fund a lifestyle he couldn't otherwise afford. The affair was just the most recent expense. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my bank's number. Mr. Halston, this is Patricia Williams at First National. We've completed our review of the Wilmington property loan, and we need to schedule a meeting with you and Mrs. Halston immediately. What kind of meeting? The kind where we discuss loan fraud and criminal charges. Can you be here at 2 p.m.? I looked at Sam and Jennifer. We'll be there. After hanging up, Sam leaned back in his chair. This is moving faster than I expected. Good or bad? Good for you and Jennifer. Very bad for Daniel and Claire. We spent the next hour reviewing strategy. The restraining orders would keep Daniel and Claire away from us physically, but they'd also prevent them from coordinating their legal defense. Separated and unable to communicate, they'd be forced to make individual decisions about how to handle the mounting legal pressure. Divide and conquer, Sam explained. It's harder to maintain a unified story when you can't talk to your co-conspirator. At 2 p.m., we met with Patricia Williams and 2 other bank officials in a conference room that felt more like an interrogation chamber. Patricia was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd been dealing with financial fraud since before I was born. Mr. Halston, we've reviewed all the documentation you provided, and frankly, this is one of the most blatant cases of loan fraud we've seen this year. She spread out copies of Daniel and Claire's loan application on the table. They claimed the property was for business use, specifically a dental practice satellite office, but our investigation shows it's been used exclusively as a personal residence. What are the consequences? Jennifer asked. Immediate foreclosure. The full loan amount, $180,000 plus interest and penalties, is due within 30 days. If they can't pay, we seize the property. Can they pay? Sam asked. Patricia consulted her notes. Dr. Hawthorne's practice has significant debt, and his personal accounts have been frozen due to the restraining order. Mrs. Halston's accounts are also frozen. Unless they have assets we don't know about, they're looking at bankruptcy. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. What about criminal charges? We're referring the case to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Loan fraud involving amounts over $100,000 is a federal felony. They could be looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Jennifer gripped my arm. Prison? If they're convicted, Patricia clarified, but first-time offenders often get plea deals involving restitution and probation. We left the bank with copies of all the foreclosure documents. Jennifer was quiet during the drive back to her mother's house, staring out the window at the December landscape. Are you okay? I asked finally. I keep thinking about Thanksgiving dinner, she said. How normal everything seemed. Daniel was checking his phone, Claire was drinking wine, the kids were playing, and the whole time, this was all building up underneath. They made their choices, Jennifer. Every Tuesday afternoon for 18 months, they chose to continue the affair. Every time they signed a fraudulent document or told us a lie, they chose to dig themselves deeper. I know, it's just, I never thought my life would become something this ugly. It won't stay ugly. This is just the cleanup phase. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're destroying innocent people's lives. Now, stop this before it's too late. I showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head. Claire? Probably. She's using someone else's phone since the restraining order prohibits direct contact. What are you going to do? Nothing. Let her panic. Desperate people make mistakes, and I want Claire and Daniel to make as many mistakes as possible. Jennifer's mother met us at the door with the baby and a grim expression. There's been a development, she said without preamble. What kind of development? Daniel's been calling here every hour since noon. I finally answered and told him to stop harassing my family. What did he say? He said he's willing to confess everything if you'll agree to a settlement. He wants to avoid criminal charges. I looked at Jennifer, who was holding her son and looking exhausted. What do you want to do? I want to hear what he has to say, but not because I'm ready to forgive him, because I want to know exactly how deep this betrayal goes. Then we'll set up a meeting, through lawyers, with everything recorded. You think he'll agree to that? Jennifer, Daniel's looking at federal prison time and financial ruin. He'll agree to anything if he thinks it might save him. But as we made the arrangements for Daniel's confession, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something important. Daniel and Claire had been careless in many ways, but they weren't stupid. The affair had been going on for 18 months without discovery until I'd started investigating. What else had they been hiding? And more importantly, what would they do when they realized their situation was hopeless? The meeting with Daniel took place in Sam Krebs's office on a gray Thursday morning. Daniel looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd been arrested in. His lawyer, a nervous young man named Peterson, kept checking his watch as if he had somewhere better to be. Jennifer sat beside me, her face composed but her hands trembling slightly. She'd left the baby with her mother, saying she didn't want any distractions during Daniel's confession. Before we begin, Sam announced, I want to make it clear that this conversation is being recorded, and anything said here can be used in both the divorce proceedings and any criminal prosecution. Daniel nodded miserably. I understand. Then let's start with the affair. When did it begin? 18 months ago. Maybe 19. It was after Jennifer's birthday party. Jennifer flinched. My birthday party? You started sleeping with my sister right after my birthday party? Not right after. A few weeks later. Claire called me about planning a surprise for your anniversary, and we met for coffee to discuss it. We talked for 3 hours. It felt easy, natural. So you decided to have an affair because talking to my sister felt natural? Daniel's lawyer put a restraining hand on his client's arm, but Daniel shook him off. No, that's not how it happened. We met for coffee a few more times, just as friends, but Claire was having problems with Nick. What problems? I interrupted. She said you were distant, distracted, that you'd stopped being romantic, stopped paying attention to her. She felt neglected. I almost laughed. So she decided to have an affair instead of talking to me about it. She said she tried to talk to you, but you just brushed her off. Said you were too busy with work? When did the affair become physical? Daniel looked at the table. 3 months after we started meeting. Claire invited me to lunch at that hotel on Highway 9. She'd booked a room. Jennifer made a sound like she'd been punched. She seduced you? We seduced each other. It wasn't one-sided. But it continued for over a year. Yes. And during that time, you decided to buy a house together? The beach house was Claire's idea. She said we needed a place where we could be together without sneaking around hotel rooms. Somewhere we could pretend to be a normal couple. Sam leaned forward. Whose idea was it to lie on the loan application? Mine, Daniel admitted. I knew we couldn't qualify for the loan if we told the truth about our relationship status, so I listed it as a business property. And Claire went along with this. She signed the papers. She knew what we were doing. Jennifer stood up abruptly and walked to the window. What about the money, Daniel? How much did you steal from your practice to pay for this affair? Daniel's lawyer started to object, but Daniel waved him off again. About $150,000 over 2 years. How? Billing insurance companies for procedures I didn't perform, ordering equipment and supplies that I sold for cash, taking out business loans for expansion that never happened. And you used that money for what? Dinners, trips, jewelry for Claire, the down payment on the beach house, renovations to make it perfect for her. I felt sick listening to the casual way Daniel described systematic fraud and theft. What about your son? What about Jennifer? Did you ever think about what this would do to your family? Every day, Daniel said, and for the first time his voice cracked. But I couldn't stop. Claire made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Being with her was like being the person I always wanted to be. The person you wanted to be was a criminal and an adulterer. The person I wanted to be was someone worthy of Claire Sutherland. Jennifer turned from the window, her face flushed with anger. Claire Sutherland? She's not Claire Sutherland anymore, Daniel. She's been Claire Halston for 8 years. She's been married to Nick for 8 years. But you never saw her as a married woman, did you? That's not... You saw her as the rich, beautiful Sutherland daughter who was too good for her boring husband. You thought if you could win her away from Nick, you'd somehow become worthy of the Sutherland family fortune. Daniel's silence was answer enough. Sam consulted his notes. Let's talk about the pregnancy. Is the baby yours? Claire says it is. Do you believe her? Another long pause. I don't know. The timing is right, but what? But Claire was still sleeping with Nick during our affair. She never stopped being his wife. Not completely. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. What do you mean, she never stopped being my wife? Daniel looked at me with something that might have been pity. She was still having relations with you, Nick. She said it was necessary to avoid suspicion, but I think she genuinely cared about both of us. She was sleeping with both of us at the same time? For the entire 18 months, yes. Jennifer sat back down heavily. So the baby could be Nick's? It could be anyone's, Daniel said bitterly. Claire wasn't as exclusive as I thought she was. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the recording equipment. I stared at Daniel, trying to process what he'd just revealed. Claire hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been living a complete double life, maintaining intimate relationships with both of us simultaneously. Is there anything else? Sam asked finally. There's someone else, Daniel said quietly. What do you mean, someone else? Claire was seeing another man besides Nick and me, someone from her gym. Jennifer stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. How many people was she sleeping with? I don't know. I found out about the gym guy 2 weeks ago. That's when I realized Claire wasn't the person I thought she was. Who is he? His name is Marcus. He's a personal trainer. Claire's been seeing him for about 6 months. I felt the room spinning around me. Not only had Claire been cheating on me with her brother-in-law, but she'd been cheating on her lover with yet another man. The pregnancy could belong to any of 3 different fathers. Does Marcus know about you and Nick? Jennifer asked. I don't think so. Claire kept all of us separate. Sam looked at his notes and shook his head. This complicates the paternity issue significantly. It also explains why Claire was so confident, I realized. She thought she could manipulate all of us, play us against each other. She never expected us to compare notes. Daniel nodded miserably. She's very good at making each man feel like he's the only one who truly understands her. Not anymore, Jennifer said grimly. Now we all understand her perfectly. The meeting continued for another hour, with Daniel providing details about financial accounts, property purchases, and the timeline of Claire's various relationships. By the time we finished, we had enough evidence to destroy both of them in court. But as we left Sam's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire still had one more surprise waiting for us. And I was right. The surprise came in the form of a phone call from Patricia Williams at the bank. 3 days after Daniel's confession, Claire had contacted them directly, claiming she was the victim of domestic violence and financial abuse, and requesting that the foreclosure proceedings be delayed pending a criminal investigation. She's claiming you coerced her into signing the loan documents, Patricia explained when I arrived at the bank. She says she was afraid of you and signed under duress. That's ridiculous. I didn't even know about the loan until after I discovered the affair. I believe you, Mr. Halston. But we have to investigate any claims of domestic violence before proceeding with foreclosure. I sat in Patricia's office, staring at copies of Claire's handwritten statement. She'd crafted a story portraying herself as a terrified wife trapped in an abusive marriage, forced to participate in financial fraud by a controlling husband who threatened her if she didn't comply. How long will this delay the foreclosure? Potentially weeks or months, depending on the investigation. And if her claims are proven false? Then she'll face additional charges for filing a false police report and obstructing justice. I called Sam from the bank parking lot. Claire's trying to play the victim card. I heard. Jennifer's dealing with the same thing. Claire filed a restraining order against both of you, claiming you're stalking and harassing her. Based on what evidence? Text messages, allegedly. She claims you've been sending her threatening messages from untraceable phone numbers. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. I haven't sent her any messages. I know that, but we'll have to prove it, which means turning over your phone records and submitting to a polygraph test. Fine, when? This afternoon. Meet me at the police station at 3 p.m. I spent the rest of the morning at Jennifer's mother's house, helping Jennifer prepare for her own polygraph test. The baby was napping in his portable crib while Jennifer paced around the living room, too agitated to sit still. She's trying to make us look like the criminals, Jennifer said. After everything she and Daniel did, she's trying to turn herself into the victim. It won't work. We have too much evidence, and Daniel's already confessed. What if the police believe her? What if they think we're the ones who committed fraud? Then we'll prove them wrong. Claire's story has holes in it, Jennifer. Big ones. Like what? Like the fact that she was simultaneously having affairs with 3 different men while claiming to be a terrified abuse victim. Like the fact that she actively participated in planning the beach house purchase and decorating it. Like the fact that she withdrew money from our joint account the day after Thanksgiving, which doesn't sound like the behavior of someone afraid of her husband. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've pushed this too far. People are going to get hurt. I showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head in disgust. She's still trying to manipulate you. Let her try. Every message she sends is more evidence of harassment. The polygraph tests went smoothly. Both Jennifer and I passed without any issues, while Claire's test results were inconclusive, a polite way of saying she'd failed. The police investigation into her domestic violence claims was dropped within 48 hours, but Claire wasn't finished. On Friday morning, Sam called with news that made my head spin. Claire's pregnant with twins, he announced without preamble. Twins? Fraternal twins, which means they could have different fathers. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. How is that possible? It's called superfecundation. Rare, but it happens when a woman releases multiple eggs and has relations with multiple partners within a short time frame. So one baby could be mine, one could be Daniel's, and neither could be the gym trainer's. Any combination is possible. We'll need DNA tests on all potential fathers. How long will that take? The babies won't be born for another 4 months. We can do paternal testing then, or we can wait until after birth for more accurate results. I hung up and stared out my kitchen window at the December snow beginning to fall. In 4 months, Claire would give birth to twins who might or might not be related to me. Daniel was facing federal fraud charges and the loss of his dental practice. Jennifer was starting over as a single mother with a toddler and no idea what her financial future looked like, and Claire was still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. My phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer. Nick, you need to get over here right now. What's wrong? Just come, and bring Sam if you can reach him. I called Sam on the way to Mrs. Patterson's house, but got his voicemail. Whatever Jennifer had discovered, I'd have to handle it myself initially. Jennifer met me at the door with an expression I'd never seen before, part triumph, part disgust, part amazement. What is it? I asked. Claire's been recording us. What do you mean? Jennifer led me into the living room, where her laptop was open on the coffee table. She's been wearing a wire during her meetings with the police, with the bank, with everyone. She recorded her conversation with Daniel at the jail. She recorded her phone calls with her parents. She's been documenting everything. How do you know this? Because she sent the recordings to my mother's email address by mistake. She meant to send them to her lawyer, but she mixed up the email addresses. Jennifer clicked play on an audio file. Claire's voice filled the room, clear and confident. The key is to make them think they're winning, while I gather evidence of their conspiracy against me. Nick thinks he's so smart with his investigation, but he's been documenting his own harassment campaign. Jennifer's so emotional she'll say things that make her look unstable. By the time this goes to court, I'll be the sympathetic victim, and they'll be the vindictive ex-spouses. Another voice, male and unfamiliar. What about Daniel? He's already confessed to everything. Daniel's weak. He'll do whatever I tell him to do if I promise to stand by him. The confession can be recanted. We'll claim he was coerced. And the pregnancy? Claire's laugh was cold and calculating. The pregnancy is my insurance policy. Even if I lose everything else, the father of my children will have to support me for the next 18 years. And since there are 3 possible fathers, I can choose whichever one is most financially advantageous. Jennifer stopped the recording. There are 6 hours of this, Nick. 6 hours of Claire planning how to destroy us while pretending to be the victim. I stared at the laptop screen, feeling a mixture of rage and admiration. Claire had been playing a game so complex that none of us had seen the full scope of it. Even while her world was collapsing around her, she'd been working on a backup plan. Who's the man on the recording? Her lawyer, I think, or maybe the personal trainer. I haven't listened to all of it yet. We need to get this to Sam immediately. I already called him. He's on his way over. I sat down on Mrs. Patterson's couch, listening to the December wind rattle the windows. Outside, the snow was falling harder, coating the world in deceptive white purity. Claire had made one final mistake, the kind of mistake that desperate people make when they think they're smarter than everyone else. She'd documented her own conspiracy to commit perjury and obstruct justice, and now we had her. Sam arrived within the hour, bringing a digital forensics expert named Tina who specialized in audio evidence. They spent the afternoon in Mrs. Patterson's living room, analyzing Claire's recordings and preparing legal documents. This is a prosecutor's dream, Sam explained as Tina worked on her laptop. Claire's essentially confessed to perjury, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and fraud, all in her own voice, with timestamps proving when the recordings were made. What does this mean for the divorce proceedings? Jennifer asked. It means Claire loses everything. The recordings prove she's been lying about domestic violence, lying about being coerced, and actively conspiring to frame both of you for crimes you didn't commit. Tina looked up from her computer. There's more. She's been in contact with Daniel despite the restraining order. I've got recordings of at least 12 phone calls where they coordinate their stories and plan their legal strategy. That's violation of a court order, Sam noted. Both of them could face jail time just for that. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Richard Sutherland's number. Nicholas, I need to see you immediately. My office, downtown. Mr. Sutherland, I'm in the middle of... Now, Nicholas, this can't wait. I looked at Sam and Jennifer. Claire's father wants to see me. This could be important. Go, Jennifer said. We'll be here analyzing recordings. Richard Sutherland's office occupied the top floor of the tallest building in downtown, with windows overlooking the entire city. He was standing at those windows when I arrived, looking older and more frail than he had before his heart attack. Sit down, Nicholas. I took a chair across from his massive desk, noting the legal documents spread across its surface. I've been hearing disturbing things about my daughter, he said without turning around. What kind of things? Things that suggest she's been lying to me about her marriage, her relationships, and her current legal situation. Mr. Sutherland. Richard. Call me Richard. He turned from the window and sat down across from me. I've hired my own investigator to look into Claire's activities. What he's found disgusts me. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs, bank records, and surveillance reports documenting Claire's affairs with Daniel, the personal trainer, and apparently 2 other men I'd never heard of. 5 different men, Richard said quietly. My daughter has been conducting relationships with 5 different men simultaneously, including her own brother-in-law. I stared at the photographs, Claire entering hotel rooms, restaurants, even what appeared to be someone's private residence. The timestamps showed the photos were taken over the past year. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand that whatever you think you know about Claire, the reality is worse. Richard opened another folder. Financial records. Claire has been systematically stealing from her trust fund for 3 years. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but it adds up to nearly $300,000. Stealing how? Fake invoices for charitable donations that never happened, payments to contractors for home improvements that were never made, business expenses for companies that don't exist. I felt sick. She's been planning this for years. Planning what? Her exit strategy. If her marriage to me fell apart, she'd need money to maintain her lifestyle. The trust fund theft, the affairs with multiple men, even the pregnancy. It's all designed to give her options. Richard nodded grimly. My investigator believes Claire has been preparing for divorce since shortly after your marriage. Everything she's done has been calculated to maximize her financial position when the marriage ended. But the adultery clause in your will, can be challenged if Claire can prove she was the victim of domestic violence or financial abuse, which is exactly what she's trying to do. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process the scope of Claire's deception. She never intended to stay married to me. I don't think she's ever intended to stay married to anyone. Claire sees marriage as a business arrangement, and she's always looking for a better deal. What do you want me to do with this information? Richard stood up and walked back to the window. I want you to destroy her, Nicholas, completely and thoroughly. My daughter has become a sociopath, and she needs to face the consequences of her actions. The legal system will give her a slap on the wrist and allow her to start over somewhere else. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. Real consequences. What are you suggesting? Richard turned back to me, and I saw something in his eyes that reminded me why he'd been so successful in business. It wasn't kindness or fairness. It was the cold calculation of a man who understood power. I'm suggesting that you use every piece of evidence, every legal tool, every advantage you have to make sure Claire never recovers from this. I want her to spend the next 20 years paying for what she's done to you, to Jennifer, to her own family. And if I do that, then you'll have my complete support, including financial backing for legal fees and a job offer that will set you up for life. I looked at the documents spread across Richard's desk, evidence of crimes, betrayals, and manipulations that went far beyond anything I'd discovered on my own. I'll need copies of everything. Already prepared. He handed me a briefcase. Everything my investigator found, plus some additional financial records you'll find interesting. What kind of financial records? The kind that show Claire's been embezzling from her own charity foundation. The kind that prove she's been running a sophisticated financial fraud operation for years. I stood up, briefcase in hand. Why are you doing this? She's your daughter. Richard's expression was stone cold. She stopped being my daughter when she decided to destroy 2 families for her own entertainment. Now she's just a criminal who happens to share my name. I left Richard's office and drove back to Mrs. Patterson's house, where Sam, Jennifer, and Tina were still working on Claire's recordings. When I walked in with the briefcase, Sam looked up expectantly. Please tell me that's more evidence. More evidence than we'll ever need, I replied, setting the briefcase on the coffee table. As I opened it and began spreading out Richard's investigators' findings, I realized that Claire had made one final, fatal mistake. She'd underestimated her own father, and now she was going to pay for that mistake in ways she'd never imagined. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold, with snow falling steadily outside Jennifer's mother's house. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching Jennifer's son play with his new toys while Jennifer cooked breakfast. Any word from Sam about the final settlements? Jennifer asked, cracking eggs into a pan. Everything should be finalized by New Year's. Claire's agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for avoiding prison time. She'll serve 5 years probation and pay full restitution to everyone she defrauded. What about Daniel? 2 years in minimum security prison, plus restitution. His dental license is permanently revoked. Jennifer nodded, focusing on her cooking. And the babies? DNA tests confirmed that one is mine, one is Daniel's. Claire will have full custody, but both Daniel and I will pay child support. Are you okay with that? I considered the question while watching the snow fall. I'm okay with supporting my child. I'm not okay with Claire raising him, but that's something I'll have to work through in family court over the next 18 years. What about the beach house? Sold at auction last week. The bank recovered most of their losses. Claire and Daniel split the remaining debt, about $40,000 each. Jennifer brought me a plate of eggs and bacon, then sat down across from me. Do you ever regret how this all played out? You mean, do I regret exposing Claire's affairs and financial crimes? I mean, do you regret destroying her so completely? She lost her inheritance, her husband, her home, her reputation. Her own father disowned her. I thought about Claire's laughter at Thanksgiving dinner, the way she'd announced my naivety like it was entertainment for her family. I thought about 18 months of lies and manipulation, about the systematic theft and fraud, about the calculated cruelty of her deception. No, I said finally. I don't regret it at all. Even knowing that your child will grow up with her as a mother? Especially knowing that. At least now there's a legal record of who Claire really is. When my child is old enough to understand, he'll have access to the truth instead of just Claire's version of events. Jennifer's mother came into the kitchen, carrying the baby and wearing the satisfied expression of a grandmother whose house is full of family on Christmas morning. Any plans for the new year, Nick? She asked, settling the baby into his high chair. Richard Sutherland offered me a position with his company. Corporate security, investigating financial fraud. It pays well and uses my skills. Working for Claire's father? Working for a man who values truth over family loyalty. I respect that. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Merry Christmas, Nick. I hope you're satisfied with what you've accomplished. I showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head. She's still trying to get the last word. Let her try. I'm done responding to Claire's manipulation. I deleted the message and put my phone away. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in clean white silence. Jennifer raised her coffee cup. To new beginnings. To consequences, I corrected, touching my cup to hers. To justice, Mrs. Patterson added, joining our toast. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall and listening to the baby babble contentedly in his high chair. Somewhere across town, Claire was waking up in a studio apartment, alone and broke and facing years of legal obligations. Daniel was spending Christmas in a federal prison, probably wondering how his perfect life had collapsed so completely. And I was here, in a warm kitchen full of people who cared about truth more than convenience, watching my nephew play with toys while snow covered the mistakes of the past year. Claire had laughed at me once, announcing to her family that I was too naive to see what was right in front of me. She'd been wrong about that, but she'd never laugh at me again.